Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our Anax Metals Investor Webinar. I'm Nicola Gazzatti from Investor Relations Consultancy Corporate Storytime. Joining me today is Anax Metals Managing Director Geoff Laing, who will be providing an investor update on the cornerstone investment in the company and the Whim Creek Copper-Zinc Project from Mineral Development Partners, a global consortium formed to invest in and unlock value from high potential mineral assets worldwide. So without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Geoff. Thanks, Geoff.
Thanks, Nicola, and good morning all. A very warm welcome. And I'm very pleased to be here this morning and telling you about the recent transaction which we announced yesterday morning. Obviously, very exciting. It's been quite a long road to get to this point, and here we are. So, without further ado, I plan to break the discussion or presentation up into probably four key parts. I'll just start off with a bit of a reminder about the project itself, a little bit about the consolidation, obviously the meaty part around the transaction, and then a bit of a wrap up. So we'll just kick off talking high level around I'll come back to the transaction, of course, really around our vision. You know, we acquired this project 5 years ago, and the vision has always been to become a significant copper producer, but broadly base metal producer in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. And the strategy to get to that point has essentially got three key steps: securing a strategic partner, developing the processing hub infrastructure, and then the consolidation process itself. Obviously, the second and third stage will happen concurrently, and of course we're very excited to have that strategic partner now. That relationship has kicked off. So we are looking forward to potentially becoming a 20 to 30,000 kiloton per annum producer from the Whim Creek processing hub, and that will make us a very meaningful Australian base metal producer. So I'll move on to just remind everyone a little bit about the Whim Creek project, I guess some of the important attributes, and then we'll start talking a little bit about the consolidation strategy. So Whim Creek, geographically ideally located, situated between Port Hedland and Karratha, right on the Northwest Highway. It's a brownfields project. You can see the drone image here of all of the existing infrastructure. It was developed by Straits Resources back in the early 2000s, and we have the benefit of all of the infrastructure in place there. The project is underpinned by 4 deposits, with the critical mass at the Monkapri and Whim Creek deposits, which are high grade, relatively low strip ratio, obviously open pits that will underpin what we see as a pretty low risk open pit mining start for our operations. We've got about 11 million tons of resource in place, which we acquired with the project, running at about 1% copper, just under 2% zinc, just over 0.5% lead, and some very useful golds and silver credits. Importantly, the project is fully permitted, and I really can't overstate the importance of that. There's plenty of projects, copper projects around Australia and globally. There are very few copper projects that are fully permitted, ready to go, with high grade deposits and situated in the sort of premier mining region of Australia, and Whim Creek is one, if not the only one. The primary objective around the initial development is a low capex. So we're sort of targeting best in class capital intensity, and we're able to do that through the utilization of the existing infrastructure that you can see there, and also using some smart thinking around pre-concentration. And what that really means is that we will have a pre-concentration plant a traditional concentrator that will be fed with high-grade feedstocks delivered from the pre-concentration plant, and will produce around 10,000 tonne a year of copper equivalent from that concentrator circuit. And that's really the baseline business. And we'll do that over an 8-year mine life. And that is the platform that will underpin the business. But importantly, in addition to that, we've got all of the heap leach infrastructure that you can see in front of you. And over the last nearly 5 years, we've been with our technology partners, Nexus Bonham, we've been developing very important leaching technology. And we plan to leach the low grade, I guess what you'd call the sub-economic low grade material on the existing heap using the existing infrastructure. And that'll generate from our own project another 2,000 to 3,000 tonne a year of copper equivalent. So we have this amazingly robust circuit where we've got, I guess, sort of what you'd call base load sulfide concentrates that will produce separate copper, zinc, and lead concentrates. And then in addition to that, we pick up the low-grade material that comes out of that pre-concentration plant. We put it onto the existing infrastructure, and we bioleach that using our own technology that we've developed with Nexus Bonham. The upshot of all of that is highly attractive economics. So the project at the price deck used during the DFS, well below the current copper price, will generate about 400 odd million in free cash, an NPV of about 270 million, and a very healthy 55% IRR. So that is the, I guess, sort of, as I called it, the base load that we're looking at that will underpin the development of a much larger processing hub. And I think the key takeaways from the concentrator part of the main project part of this discussion are the capital intensity. So we will be, streets ahead of most other projects at $5,000 per ton of copper. The global average is more like 15 to 20,000 tons in capital intensity. It's low risk, simple open pit mining to start off with, and that's further de-risked with the pre-concentration, the ore sorting that we've got at the front of it. Something that I haven't talked about before in this in-pit tailings. This is very important. So we're not building any tailings dams. All the tailings go into the existing pits. And that, along with the pre-concentration, the bioleaching, make this whole asset highly attractive from an ESG perspective. And then just a little bit of cream on the top, an emerging aggregate business, which we've talked about, using existing waste rock dumps. We plan to produce road base and aggregates, and that will just add additional benefits from an ESG perspective and revenue, and potentially very near-term revenue. And of course, the final part of all of that is that we sit in an amazing region from an exploration perspective. So the exploration upside is compelling, and I expect we'll see growth at least 2 of our resources, and then there's great blue sky potential. So I'm going to move on now to the consolidation strategy. So here I've got a map in front of you of the Pilbara region, and you can see here we have Whim Creek sitting right on the Northwest Highway, and then there are 9 other deposits around us that could potentially come into play in this consolidation strategy that we've got. Just to put a bit of perspective on this, the region hosts around about 500 million tons of copper and about 1.2 billion tons of zinc, aside from all of the precious metals that are there. So there's a huge metal endowment within the Pilbara base metal province. And a lot of that is locked up in assets that are what we call stranded assets. They're stranded because they just don't have the scale on their own to be developed. And they're also stranded because in many of these deposits, the oxide portion of the deposit has not yet been mined. And so you have this situation where you're ultimately going to need 2 processes which is exactly what we've got at Whim Creek. You're going to need a leaching process to deal with the oxides, and then you're going to need a concentrator to deal with the sulfides that are resident below the oxides. So when you bolt that all together, Whim Creek is the absolutely ideal platform. As you can see geographically, we sit, almost exactly in the middle of this base metal province. This is a 150-kilometer radius around us. The other important matter to talk about with the consolidation is the Pilbara region is ideally suited to consolidation. It's obviously the preeminent iron ore mining region in Australia, and probably globally as well. And the infrastructure here is massive. It's all been built to deal with large volume iron ore, massive project development. And so to have a project that sits slap bang in the middle on the main highway between Karratha and Port Hedland, and to have all of these other deposits that generally also sit on well-established transport routes means that it's all very well suited to this consolidation strategy. Overlay on that our knowledge around pre-concentration. So we're able to look at these satellite deposits, pre-concentrate the material there, so get rid of all of the dilution, all of the rubbish, and then haul only the most valuable material to go into the concentrator at Whim Creek, where we're ideally set to turn this into a very substantial operation within the Pilbara. And I'm just going to harp a little bit on the metallurgy, because you can't underestimate the importance of being able to deal with the different ore types. And when I say different ore types, I'm talking about the oxidation characteristics of the ore. Oxides, sulfides, different process. We've got both processes we will have the infrastructure for both processes at Whim Creek. And importantly, we've got the bioleaching, which sort of really bridges the gap between pure oxide processing and the transitional and primary processing. So here we are, well set to move the Whim Creek production from circa 12,000 kiloton per annum up to well above 20,000 kiloton per annum through the consolidation of some of these assets. So how do we do this? Well, as I say, I'm very excited to be talking about the transaction that took place last week and that we announced on Monday morning. So I'm going to unpack the transaction a little bit. We're pleased to have Mineral Development Partners come on as our partner, and I'll refer to them as MDP going forward from here. So Mineral Development Partners is a consortium that has been formed to invest in high potential projects. And it brings together an international commodity trading platform and experienced mine operators, and then also investment partners that sit behind that. So importantly for us, we're going to get the benefit of operators, people that have gone through the process of building and operating mines. We'll have a commodity trading group with all of the experience that they bring with it, and then of course the investors that sit behind that. I know that everyone's looking for a bit more detail on who the investment partners are, and at this stage that remains confidential. I'm sure that we'll be providing more color on that over the coming weeks and months as we progress through the stages of this transaction. So the transaction itself, 4 key stages. The first stage is the investment at the corporate level. That's by way of a convertible note. The convertible note has a conversion price of 1.5 cents. So that's set at a 200% premium to the share price when we went into the trading halt. The convertible note will provide funding for Anax as we go through this due diligence process. And the expectation is that the notes will convert subject to FIRB approval, and that process will kick off immediately. The applications for FIRB approval, it's subject to shareholder approval, and then, of course, subject to satisfactory due diligence on MDP's part. And MDP have obviously commenced that due diligence process. We are in ongoing discussions with MDP. We have their team coming down next week, and we're very excited to be moving ahead on that. So once the conversion takes place, MDP will have a 19.9% shareholding at the corporate level. And sorry, the other important part of this is that definitive agreements are in place. Importantly, in those agreements, there will be a subscription agreement for the next stage, which is now we move from the corporate level investment down to the project equity level investments. So the first project equity level investment is $10 million, which will be put directly into Whim Creek Metals. So Whim Creek Metals is a 100% held subsidiary of Anax currently. Whim Creek Metals will be converted into a special purpose vehicle for the purpose of this transaction. And at that second stage, when $10 million is injected into Whim Creek Metals, MDP will acquire a 30% interest at the project level. Anax will, of course, be left with a 70% interest. And at that point, we really ramp up the process of the moving the project forward to FID, obviously continuing on with consolidation activities, unlocking the upside from Whim Creek. So there may be some drilling that goes with that. There'll obviously be further work on updating DFS, et cetera, And at that point, we'll be pushing really hard to get to FID as rapidly as possible, which will then obviously see us move to the third stage, which is another project level investment. So MDP will then put up to $50 million. Sorry, I'll just jump back. The $10 million at the first stage will see MDP moving to a 30% interest and Anax at 70% interest. When we move to the next stage, MDP will put in $50 million, which will acquire another 42% or up to 42% interest. And that will provide all of the equity funding required for the project. So at that point, we would see that the equity funding for the project is taken care of. We're, of course, very confident that the debt funding will just seamlessly follow in on the back of the equity funding that's there. So that means that at that point, we retain a 28% of a fully funded copper project out of the Pilbara. And, that's obviously the critical phase. We want to move to that as rapidly as possible. We've explained before that the project can be brought into operation within just 18 months from the FID. And, we look forward to getting FID in place as soon as possible. Then importantly, and this is where really the uptake comes along, because MDP have the capacity then to really underpin the consolidation. And that doesn't mean that this will all happen in the sequence that I've described. Obviously, consolidation can happen through any of these stages. The consolidation, MDP have made provision for $40 million to help support that process. And, obviously I can't give you any further details of what it looks like behind that. But, we're confident that we're going to move forward now and be in a position to start bringing together some of these assets within our region. And I'll just make the point in all of that. We are currently spreading the net a bit further. We've talked about three key projects up until now, but we are peeling back the layers on some of the other projects in our region, and we'll make sure that we are able to deal on projects to the greatest benefit of our strategy and our timing. So that would ultimately see Anax retaining just under 20% of what will be a very significant base metal production asset in the Pilbara region, and it would be fully funded. So for us, this sort of really does just set the pathway to what we had always planned to achieve. And, obviously it's critical that we get this convertible note and the due diligence complete. That's where we've got our whole team solely focused at the moment. We plan to knock that over as soon as possible, get those further approvals in place, and then move on to the important stage of getting the project equity investment in place. So that is the I guess the nuts and bolts of the transaction. And I just in wrapping up now, I just want to talk a little bit about delivery. So since acquiring the project 5 years ago, when we picked the project up, it was in a pretty poor state, subject to an environmental protection notice. We said that we were going to fix that up. We have fixed that up. We had the environmental protection notice revoked. We said we were going to get funding for the project. We're a long way down the track. We said we were going to get approvals in place for the project. We've done all of that. We said we were going to get relevant studies completed. We've done that. And we talked about consolidation, and we've sort of set the wheels in motion for multiple different opportunities in that consolidation. And not least of all, we've enhanced our understanding of the key elements, the pre-concentration, the leaching, that will really unlock significant value in our region. So I'd just like to, as I finish off here, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank the team, our small but incredibly dedicated team that have sort of worked through some pretty tough times in getting to this place. We're immensely proud of what we've achieved so far, and we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us, but we're very excited about this transaction, and we're very pleased to be working with the Mineral Development Partners team and welcome them on board. So thank you very much. I'll hand back to you, Nicola.
Thank you, Geoff. A very comprehensive update. We'll now jump into the Q&A session. Our first question for you: does the investment from MDP diminish the likelihood of the Whim Creek joint venture to pursue the previously discussed strategy to develop Whim Creek as a Pilbara-based metals processing hub?
Not at all. Our strategies are entirely aligned. MDP are very much focused on near-term copper production from the Whim Creek platform, and then of course the expansion is pivotal for MDP. So I think we're very much aligned to be carrying on with what we previously talked about.
Fantastic. Thanks, Geoff. Our next question: will MDP seek to appoint representatives to assist in managing the activities of the Whim Creek joint venture? And will Anax's team continue to be responsible for driving the project forward?
Yeah, that's important question, and so yes to both of those. We see such a benefit in having a partner that has operations experience, obviously has trading experience, and is has the financial grunt to take it forward. So we expect that we'll be drawing on that experience through this initial phase. Of the Anax team and of course our technology partners, Nexus, are absolutely critical in making all these moving parts come together. And I think that MDP recognise that this team needs to be an integral part as we move forward. But of course, like all of these projects, there will be a change in what the makeup of the team looks like. The team will grow by necessity as we get closer to the development stage. It'll become more engineering heavy. as you'd expect. And, we certainly expect that that MDP will be there all the way. And I'll also just make a point, we do expect that MDP will be having board representation, of course, when they move to 19.9%. And we very much look forward to them being both at the board level and at the project level.
Thanks, Geoff. Our next question. Any news on the Sulphur Springs Memorandum of Understanding that Anax has previously announced alongside Develop Global? Is Whim Creek still a viable processing option for some of the ore types at Sulphur Springs?
Yeah, so absolutely. We've continued to focus on the potential to unlock value for that opportunity. The test work that we did and the various studies that we've done on the back of having completed the test work all strongly suggest that significant value can be unlocked by treating the oxide and transitional material at Whim Creek. And I made the point very strongly during the presentation that you really, when you've got the two different ore types, the oxides and then the sulfides, or let's call it oxides and transitional, you need leaching to deal with that material, and then the concentrated process for the other. So, I think we're still very well positioned for that. Obviously, we've been very focused on getting this transaction bedded down. Develop, understandably, very focused on Woodlawn at the moment, but we still see that there's plenty of opportunity and lots of upside to be unlocked by that strategy of leaching Sulphur Springs oxide and transitional at Whim Creek.
That's great. Thanks, Geoff. Our next question for you. One of the key differences between the Whim Creek project and most conventional milling and flotation plants is the use of the ore sorting to pre-concentrate ores, and also the inclusion of the heap leach to treat the lower grade ore sorter rejects. Can you further outline how this provides operational flexibility and efficiency?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And really the flow sheet, essentially what's just been described, provides not only flexibility but incredible robustness, because the pre-concentration is able to, at the earliest part of the process, strip out waste, which we will turn into aggregates. We're developing an aggregate business, but it also strips out low-grade sub-economic ore. And so, what we're able to do here is to feed only the highest grade economic ore into what I call a turbocharged concentrator. And then the low grade material then goes into a low intensity operation, which is a heap leach using bacteria, the bugs. And that's the appropriate processing for that material. So, we see this process that we've developed as something that's going to be valuable well beyond Whim Creek and the consolidation of the region. But those two linkages between the pre-concentration and the bioleaching just provide significant upside to the base load, what I've called the base load stock standard concentrator process.
Thank you, Geoff. Our next question. Do you see any potential changes to the economics of the project?
Yeah, so we obviously the process going forward for us now is through the due diligence, we'll then move into a phase of re-looking at the DFS. The DFS was prepared in April 23, and we will go back and I guess sort of recalibrate the DFS. And in that process, I think that we'll see significant value unlocked, not least of all on the reserve side of things, because I think that all of our reserve estimates were based on commodity prices that are very different to where they currently are. So we're going to see reserve growth. We're going to see some optimization around the processing that we do. That means that we'll probably increase the scale of the concentrator. So there's some upside that might come out of that. So you see a bit of reserve growth, some production growth. We've obviously learned a fair bit more about the bioleaching since April 23. And then on the back of that, there's immediate exploration potential, and when near resource growth, or essentially growth at Moncrief South, growth at Evelyn, growth at Salt Creek. Just depending on the strategy, we will probably start doing some drilling there, so there'll be that growth as well. So the answer is yes. I think that when we get to that phase of the $10 million injection, we'll be absolutely ramped up to unlock all of this sort of immediate value that we've got sitting in the project, or upside value, should I say.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Geoff. And next question, when is the production of road aggregate from stockpiled waste rock at Whim Creek set to commence? And what is the revenue projection for this activity?
That's an interesting one. So we have previously talked about the fact that we have produced road aggregate. So we did a commercial scale trial. We produced about 12,000 tons of aggregate. And on the back of that, we're very pleased to be able to report that the aggregate produced from and it's the Whim Creek pit waste dump. Despite the fact that that's not the sort of more common basalt material that you'd expect in road base, but it's more of a slaty material. It produces fantastic road base, and we've done a lot of work around that now. So we have actually produced road base at a sort of commercial level. Going forward, we're working with a company that already has some requirements for, in fact, they've got requirements for aggregate, and we're just looking at locking away a contract with them on that aggregate, and that aggregate will, as another product, generate road base as well. So, look, we've had to take our foot off the gas on the road base a little bit because we're a relatively small team, and we've been all hands on deck on getting this deal across the line. But we're certainly going to refocus on the aggregate business. Near-term cash production, we're certainly hoping within a few months we could be there. The aggregate business is quite lumpy. Obviously, it's contract dependent, and so we've been doing a lot of groundwork. We've positioned ourselves well to get something in place, but it is lumpy, and we're still working at that.
Thank you, Geoff. That does look like we've covered most of the questions from our audience today. If there's anything we didn't get to, feel free to send your questions through to info@corporatestorytime.com, and we'd be happy to follow up. Geoff, before we wrap up today, do you have any closing remarks?
Thanks, Nicola. I would just like to say in closing, we've got a bit of a spring in our step again. It's been quite a long, tough journey to get here, and we're really pleased to have MDP as our partners. We've got lots to be getting on with, lots of upside, and we do look forward to delivering on that vision that I talked about right at the start. Watch the space, and again, thanks to my team here. They've been amazing.
They certainly have, Geoff. We will be sharing a recording of this webinar on Anax Metals and Corporate Storytime social media accounts in the coming days, so please keep an eye out for that. This does conclude our webinar for today. A big thank you to Geoff and the Anax team for the update, and of course to all of you for joining us. Thanks again, Geoff.
Thank you. Thanks all.